Welcome, everyone, to the strategy call from Resolute Square. I'm Tara Setmayer, and tonight we have our excellent panel of experts to talk strategy, what's happened since the last time we were together. But before we get to them, let's remind you of who Resolute Square is and what we're doing here. Take a look.
They've been winning for years.
I'm very proud of them.
Decades. The right-wing media machine. They play by different rules. Alternative facts become America's reality. They lie for money, for power. They lie because they know they can get away with it. Ready to fight back? We took on Trump and defeated him. Now we need to take on the MAGA media. We need a powerful media voice dedicated to crushing the enemies of democracy. And now it's here. Resolute Square. Resolute Square is a growing community of creators, thinkers, strategists, and activists with one mission: to defend democracy. We're not a news organization. The old media models are failing. Resolute Square refuses to tell both sides of a lie. We proudly declare a fierce, relentless bias for democracy. All bias, all the time. We're not here to debate the people who will destroy democracy. We know we're right, and they are wrong. We are here to win. This is what we believe. We must take the fight beyond the ballot box to where the autocrats are winning, the media landscape of America. At Resolute Square, we will get up every morning to defeat the dangerous MAGA media. We will speak truth to their lies. We're not billionaire extremists. We're Americans, and we will fight. If we join together, we will win. We will not let a corrupt minority steal what it means to be an American. We will fight for the heart and soul of this country. We can do this. We must do this. Together. Resolute Square. Join us.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us again tonight. We are here with a strategy call because we feel it's important to let you guys inside the room with those of us who have been strategists and inside the room of the most powerful people in politics, from presidential races on down to mayor races to dog catcher and all of that. And we want to share that knowledge with you and break some things down. So this week, I think it's important to give a chance to you, Joe Trippi, because I know that you feel very strongly about this. Before we get into the dinner scene around the world last week in Mar-a-Lago, Joe, just talk a little bit more about Resolute Square, why we're here, and why it's so important for us to exist in this moment right now.
Well, I'd like to start with why I joined the Lincoln Project. And the reason I joined the Lincoln Project was because at the ballot box, I learned after January 6th that, look, this can't be right versus left, can't be Republicans versus Democrats. This is all of us building a pro-democracy coalition that can defeat the authoritarians at the ballot box. That was the reason I joined. And the more we worked together, the more a lot of us started talking about, there's one thing to fight at the ballot box with a PAC, but Fox and Newsmax and Breitbart and all of them, Newsmax, all of them have been built over 30, 40 years with billionaires funding them, creating these networks. Now you see not just Facebook, but Twitter going crazy. And there needed to be a way to fight that outrage right-wing cult media machine. And it's not going to happen with a billionaire coming to the rescue and starting a media company, or with CNN or MSNBC doing the both sides stuff and all the other networks and news groups out there. No, there has to be a pro-democracy platform for communications, a pro-democracy hub that's designed to allow all the creativity out there, not just us, not just those that are on this show every Tuesday or Thursday right now, but to build a platform where we can attack that right-wing cult media machine that sets the agenda They're the ones that drive, whether it's crime or critical race theory or whatever the new out, or the caravan that's coming tomorrow. They set that agenda. The mainstream media follows it, and no one knocks it down. And
That's
so
right.
that's what we're doing here. People don't know this. We don't talk about it a lot, but look, we came together, put $1.5 million together to make this, to get it off the ground, investing our own money and getting friends and family and some other courageous folks that took the risk and said, "Here, let's go," and we started it up. But the only way to do this is we need people to get involved, to become creators, and we're getting lots of people are signing up. To David Pepper and others are signing up, but also to subscribe to support this effort. And the more subscribers we get, the bigger we can build this pro-democracy hub that, yes, has a bias. We're pro-democracy, and we're going to take on its enemies in the media, just as we disrupted them at the ballot box, and we need to keep doing that. And there's people like Lincoln Project, and we're involved in that. We'll do that. We need to disrupt their media outrage machine, take it head on, and it's got to start somewhere. We decided we couldn't wait anymore, and we need everybody out there who cares about this to subscribe. That's what you're doing when you subscribe to Resolute Square, is you're actually at the ground floor of creating the communications hub for pro-democracy outlet and creativity to take this outrage machine on and hit back hard.
Right. That's the bottom line, that there has to be a counter to what we see in the right-wing media ecosystem. Stu, we talk about this all the time. They have been building this for decades, and from talk radio to it influenced me into becoming a conservative. I listened to talk radio for years. My mom listened to Bob Grant, for goodness sakes, back in New York in those days. And then it was Rush, and then it was Levin and all those guys. And it's this huge ecosystem with a pipeline of information that is impacting people's behavior. And there hasn't been an appropriate counter. And that's why in the pro-democracy space, we felt it was necessary to do this, so that we now, with the internet and with the ability for people to watch on phones, and you can hear it everywhere, it has to start somewhere, and that's what we're doing. And for those who don't know, Stu Stevens is a veteran of 5 presidential campaigns and umpteen other campaigns as a strategist. Joe Trippi is on the Democratic side for many years. And Rick will be joining us. Rick Wilson is coming on in a few. He's had a little technical difficulties. If you guys watch us at the breakdown, you know that Rick's internet has always got gremlins. So he'll be on in a little bit too. And I think, Joe, your point about that we have to hit back because of this culture that's going on there is a good segue into our topic tonight. And we want to invite you guys to ask questions and interact with us. So make sure you go to resolutesquare.com, subscribe, and then you can ask us questions directly. And we're going to get to those in a few minutes, because we want to hear from you and give you an opportunity to ask us questions directly. Stu, this dinner last week at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump, Kanye West, Nick Fuentes, a well-known white supremacist, anti-Semite, misogynist, lunatic, 24 years old, leading a very scary, dangerous, and despicable movement that is growing, by the way. They're all dining, breaking bread together at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump claims, I don't know who they were. Get the hell out of here. We know he knows everything, okay? He counts the silverware. He knows he's involved in everything that goes on there at Mar-a-Lago. So that's a bunch of BS. But we look at this and we look at the reaction of the Republican Party. And you wrote a whole book about this called It Was All a Lie. But I got to tell you, we are a week into this. And Mitch McConnell said the bare minimum today about, or not a lot, we don't want anybody like this in the party. They're not welcome. And anyone, these euphemisms about anyone who dines with these people or invites these people will never be president of the United States. They still can't utter Trump's name. Why? No, not a peep from Kevin McCarthy, by the way, who wants to be the next Speaker of the House. What is the strategy here? Why are they still staying silent on this? I have my theories, but I want to hear yours.
Well, look, I think they're not doing it because, first of all, it doesn't really bother them that much. I think that this is a logical culmination of all these movements that happened in the party. And it, that we used to say in the Republican Party that we believe character was destiny. And I mean, now thinking about that, it seems like a joke. I mean, I say when I worked in the Republican Party, I now feel like the guy working for Bernie Madoff, who actually thought we were beating the market. Yeah. I mean, I actually believed this stuff. Like, what a dummy I was. But I think character is destiny. And what's happened is the Republican Party has no character and it is acting out its destiny. It all goes back to the fact that the Republican Party has had a choice to make. Would it grow? Would it do what was necessary to appeal to more non-white voters? So it goes back. Look, 1956, Eisenhower gets 45% of the African-American vote. It drops to 7% with Goldwater.
Goldwater, yeah.
Goldwater's against the Civil Rights Act. So you could have made imagined that for various reasons, after the Civil Rights Act was passed, more African Americans would come back to the party. Some sort of, shared values, entrepreneurship, maybe some strong on national defense issues, but that didn't happen.
Nope.
So when you think about it, since 1964, the Republican Party has largely been a predominantly white party. And we've done better and worse with Hispanics, but 85% of Trump's coalition was white. And that is sort of the essence of this. Now, back in the Bush days, we didn't do any better, to be honest, but at least we were aware of the fact that we weren't doing better.
Yes.
And we thought it was a failure.
Right, that's right.
Ken Melman, remember, 2005, he went in front of the NAACP and apologized. He's chairman of the party.
I remember.
Apologized for the Southern strategy. So when Trump got elected, I don't think it made more people racist, but I think it gave people permission to feel okay about being racist.
Right, mainstreaming it in a major party in modern times now, when that wasn't okay.
It's so this is just sort of a logical conclusion. I mean, look, when Donald Trump gets up and says in December of 2015 that he calls for a total ban on Muslims. Yeah. So, I mean, once you accept that, once you allow that, it's just a classic sort of process of.
It was before that, Stu. But go ahead, Joe.
I actually think it's you can boil this down. It's a lot simpler than all that. I agree with Stu, but look, if you look at the election results in the midterm in November, right? How close everything is. I don't know if people know this, but in the five closest congressional seats, they were decided by total. All five of those races were decided by a total of 3,240 votes. In other words, 3,240 votes move one way, switch to Democrats, and we have the majority. The Democrats have the majority in the House of Representatives today. 3,240 votes. Okay, so now let's go really simple. 5%, I don't know what the number is, 5%, 6%, 10%, 5%, let's call it 4%. 4% of your base is white supremacists. You need every freaking one of them. That's why you're not going to, that's why McConnell's not going to say anything about Trump and be kind of like euphemistic about taking it on. Hell no. Because if you don't have that 5%, you can't win anywhere. And that's they've become completely dependent on the far extremes of American society. I mean, way out there. People, and we saw tonight, the Oath Keepers, leader of the Oath Keepers, being found guilty of sedition. I mean, that's who. Right. That's what I mean. When you need that part of the electorate to have to come to get you that 32-40, right? I mean, because I'm talking about races all over the country. That's what this is about. That's how dependent
Republicans are on those folks, right?
Well,
But Stu, can I ask you this really quick though? To Joe's point, is that we all always talk about the Bannon line, right, over at LP, that 4 to 7%, and now sometimes we could maybe up that a little bit to maybe 8 or 9%. Is it that they need those the crazies, that Joe's talking about, that 5% to counter the Bannon line voters of Republicans who are not okay with this going on and coming over to the other side? Is there a counterweight to that, or am I
This is a
looking
great
too far
question.
into it?
When I worked in the Romney campaign, we lost, by the way. But you could look at polling and you could see when you tested things that if you went a certain way and waved a bloody shirt on immigration, that there was a pool of voters.
Yeah.
If you used the code language to appeal to more low propensity white voters, that they would turn out. Now, Romney obviously wouldn't consider it. I mean, we never even discussed this because Romney would never go there. But had you asked me just as a consultant, if you had a candidate who would do that, I would have said, well, if you do that, you're going to lose more voters at the top. More college-educated white voters are going to be turned off by that and walk away. So 2016 pretty much proved me wrong. Because Trump, particularly after the Comey letter at the end, he still carried college-educated Republicans. No college-educated voters, which is a little misleading because there are more college-educated white voters than there are any other demographic. So it's really a combination not only of the education but of the ethnicity. But I would have thought that happened, and it didn't happen. And I think in part it's because the Republican Party, if people say you think Trump's kind of a weird guy, okay, but your senator, you know him, maybe your governor, he or she seems like an okay person. They're for Trump. You figure, well, okay, it's a permission structure. I mean, that's something you've talked about a lot here. And that's what the Republican Party has allowed to happen. But, I actually think it's darker than what Joe was saying. I think that when there is a sense that among a lot of these core Republicans that go beyond that 5%, that something is happening culturally out there that they have trouble coming to grips with.
Yes.
And this is how the Republican Party in 2020, the Republican Party ended up on the wrong side of a cultural war with NASCAR over Confederate flags.
Yes.
Now, if you're a Republican, you're the wrong side of NASCAR. They got on the wrong side of a mask thing with Walmart. I mean, give me a fucking break. How out of touch do you have to be? But it's that whole thing, this is part of why they like Putin, why they like Obama. It's a sense of this woke culture.
Right,
that,
whatever that
they've
means.
invented this thing that you're supposed to be afraid of.
Stu, first of all, what I said was, I thought I said something was pretty dark, but
yeah, well, it is dark. But
I think, so if it's darker than what I thought, but my point was that's the 5. It's still 30. I mean, what I'm talking about is that even if you just look at just the white supremacist part of their base, they've got to hold on to that. They have to, or they can't win an election. Yeah. And so that also leads to what you're pointing at, the 30, the 40 that start going along with the other things. They look there's a permission structure, all that happens. But in the end, it's one of these things where if they jettison and denounce that, how do they, where do they make up?
You have to be willing to lose.
That's right. That's what I was going to say, Stu. You have to be willing to lose, and they also have to be willing to reform the primary process, open up primaries. Because if you have open primaries, then instead of closed primaries, then you don't have to worry about catering to the crazies who are the most dedicated in that, in the primary. Where you have open primaries, you don't have the same type of problem with the more extreme candidates. And also, I become a big proponent of ranked choice voting. I think that's something else that also widens
maybe you can explain
it
to me, because I still don't understand it. But,
I'll get my good friend Governor Bill Walker from Alaska on the line to
count something that Stewart doesn't understand.
Listen, Governor Bill Walker, who is the former governor of Alaska, he didn't win this time around, but he was a big proponent of ranked choice voting. And when we were together up at Harvard, I was like you. I'm like, I don't understand this. But then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then we saw what happened in Alaska, which is the greatest example so far, where basically, it's a rank. They did it in New York City too, where you pick your top 3 or however they want to do it, and then they add up if your guy doesn't win, then they give you they take points, the rank of who's number 2 and number 3, and then they rank it like that. That's the basics of it. But that at least gives you more options than just one or the other.
Yeah.
The really good thing is it's bad for consultants, and I just love that because it wipes out the runoff election. You know,
I think
you
there ought
look
to
at,
be a UN resolution against it then if it's
yeah.
bad for consultants. But, but I don't think as strange as it seems, I don't think we talk about race enough in the Republican Party. Because if you look at the Georgia primary, why is Herschel Walker the nominee? Why did some people sit in a room and say, let's get Herschel Walker from Texas to run in Georgia? Because he was an African-American football star.
Token.
So they go, well, look, this is simple. The only reason African-Americans are voting for Warnock is because he's African-American. So if we get Warnock, if we get another black guy to run, I mean, our black guy scored more touchdowns. He'll win.
I don't think Walker's going to win, but if Walker does win somehow, I guarantee you they're going to be looking to recruit O.J. Simpson in California.
Oh my God! Well, they're not far off.
O.J.'s got some problems, but these football guys have got problems, and look what who cares?
They didn't convict him.
Yeah,
but you're not old enough to remember this, but there was a period in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's so humiliating to even talk about this, when the party decided that the problem we had with African Americans was we just didn't know how to talk to them. So this spawned this whole cottage industry of African American consultants being hired by the Republican Party to come down and talk to us in races about how to talk to African Americans. And they would say things like, what you need to talk about is not just jobs, but meaningful jobs. And we would all nod and take notes. And we'd actually go out and do this stuff like it was going to make a difference. And I mean, in retrospect, the problem wasn't that African Americans didn't understand this. The problem was that they did understand us.
Right.
They knew exactly what we were saying, and they didn't like it.
But you know what? Here was the difference. It wasn't just, it was because you were talking, Republicans were really bad at, they were talking at the African American community. And it was transparent. When I got involved in the early 90s, when I was a college student at George Washington, and I came to Washington, D.C. because of my passion for conservative principles and politics, and I felt that the Republican Party was the best vehicle for individualism and empowerment and all of that. And Jack Kemp was the biggest influence for me outside of talk radio. But Jack Kemp got it because he was an athlete, he was around Black folks, and he saw, like, when you have relationships and you're present, that you don't need a consultant to come in and tell you how to talk to people, because Black folks wanted the same thing that white people wanted. They wanted equal access to opportunity. They didn't want to be handed, that they handed things. They wanted equal access to the opportunity. And Jack Kemp did an excellent job as the Secretary of Health and of HUD, of Housing and Urban Development, and showed people, having a presence there, showing folks in those neighborhoods what conservative principles can do when you have equal access to it. And that's where you started to see some gains with Republicans, because they respected Jack Kemp's approach because he wasn't talking at people. And I have to tell you, the years that I spent in the 90s trying to show Republicans the best way to message things was to have a presence. And you can't just do it 6 weeks before an election and show up at a fish fry or a funeral in the Black community and then have some people with stereotypical, stereotypical portrayal of tokenizing Black folks in radio ads and things like that, and thinking that that's how they relate. That's not the way to do it. And it was an uphill battle. It was an absolute uphill battle. And we see where it's gone now. It's worse now than ever. And I'm not afraid to say that Republicans have tokenized Herschel Walker and Kanye West and many others. It's embarrassing. Lindsey Graham told us that. Let's get to some of the viewer questions. Go ahead,
I look back at this. How many times toward the end of a race, we said, okay, we've got to do some Black radio.
Oh my God,
so then
I know.
You would go and you would get, an African-American announcer, and you would go and, buy Black radio, and you would do some spot.
With some terrible dialect that was something out of a Black exploitation movie.
I can't, I'm sure if you did it, there was a way to quantify it. All we didn't have many votes going in, but when we came out, we had fewer.
Yeah. Believe me, I was there for a lot of that, where I was like, are you guys out of your mind? They didn't listen. And it was very frustrating. It was a very frustrating enterprise, I've got to say. Let's get to some viewer questions, because people have lots of them, and I want to make sure that they get a chance to ask you guys questions. First up is Sarah Burgess. some of you guys were part of building the GOP and the communications machine. No mea culpas? Well, Stu, you wrote a whole book about it, so I'm going to,
Hey, listen, I wrote a book and the first sentence was blame me. And I mean that because, I was part of this. There are people who can write books. There's sort of a trope of Washington books, if only they had listened to me. I couldn't write that book because they did listen to me. Yeah. And, one of the things that drew me to the Republican Party was this concept of personal responsibility. Now, it turned out to be a total fraud. That wasn't, Now, if you're to be personal responsibly is to be a sucker, right. in Trump Republican Party. But I think it's a really fair criticism. And I look back, I mean, it's really why I joined the Lincoln Project, because I look back and I ask myself, why didn't I see this coming? Why didn't I see that this happened? And, I think there was a lot of us who worked for Bush and the compassionate conservative. I mean, we literally used to sit in the same room. Me, Nicole Wallace, Matthew Dowd, Mark McKinnon, Michael Gerson, who tragically just died, Pete Wayner.
Amazing speechwriters.
Maybe it was arrogance, maybe it was optimism, maybe it was whatever. We thought that we inevitably were the future of the party. That the party would have to expand. It would have to be, because you remember when Bush came out for compassionate conservatism, he got a lot of grief from conservatives because they said, "Are you saying that being a conservative isn't compassionate?"
Right.
And Bush's answer was yes.
Yes,
that is what I'm saying.
And I thought Bush was fantastic with that. And also, Joe, before you jump in, when Bush said during that debate that one of the most racist challenges was the soft bigotry of low expectations. He was talking about education, but that term, whoever wrote that or whoever came up with that,
Michael Gerson.
Was it Gerson?
I was in the room when he was
fantastic.
It was like watching an artist paint, and he would try out these phrases.
Yep.
And the thing about it was Bush believed that too.
Yes, he did. He did.
You know how it is in a campaign, Joe. You've been there, so much of campaigns, presidential, is like deciding what you're going to do. And there is an argument whether or not it matters what you do, like campaign sense. But our default was always to send Bush to a school of usually, underprivileged kids, because he would be a great candidate then. He would light up. He understood education. It was a major issue when he was governor. I mean, if you send into a hospital to talk about healthcare, it'd be like, people shouldn't get sick.
Yeah,
that's a bad thing. Don't get sick.
Yeah.
But he believed that. And if you go back and you look at Bush, what was his really only major piece of legislation before 9/11? It was No Child Left Behind.
That's right.
Which, he signed with Ted Kennedy over his right shoulder. Yeah. I mean, that picture would be submitted like in a war crimes tribunal.
I know.
In the Republican Party. I mean,
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, no, look, I was going to say, it gets back to why I joined the Lincoln Project, right? Yeah. My win-loss record would be a lot better if I hadn't run into Stu Stevens often out there and we were going to war with each other. And so, no, it's not about mea culpa. I mean, okay, it's about where we are now. It's about it's got to be Democrats, Republicans, independents, former never Trumpers, whatever, all of us. This is not that fight anymore.
Right.
However, it went off the rails.
Joe, think about the things that... Think about what we used to fight campaigns over.
Yeah.
We would actually have battles like, should the capital gains tax be 34% or 28%?
Yeah.
I mean, you look back on it, it's like arguing over your cholesterol count in a knife fight. It's like, really? So thought this was important?
So, I think it's a legitimate question, but I also think, hey, we got to put that this is now all of us. Anybody who wants, Liz Cheney, and people roll their eyes and throw stuff, but damn it, Adam Kinzinger, there are people out there who are taking this on, standing up and taking on this authoritarian movement, and we need all of them, and we need as many, all of us coming together, and that's why I think not just the Lincoln Project, but again, why Resolute Square in terms of taking on, because I don't think people understand how that machine that they've created, that Ailes and Murdoch and Koch brothers and somebody created, generates an outrage, goes like 100 times a day talking about that. The entire right-wing echo chamber repeats it over and over and over again, and repeating it the same, build that wall, build whatever it is,
Yep, because
critical
repetition
race
creates
theory.
reality.
And there
I
is nothing to take
no.
it on.
Listen, when I was in these campaigns,
my party can't learn to
no, I
repeat
mean, it's
things
not a
over and
fair
over.
fight. But
We
when
got
I
to
was in
do it.
these campaigns, we looked at that machine as a function of our campaign. And we would communicate, and they would call us.
That's right.
I mean, I would get calls from Roger Ailes, partly just because he missed a game and wanted to talk about politics. But we would use them as the way you would use like a communication shot.
Right.
And it was reliable.
Yeah. Of course.
and
Reliable
that's why,
and well organized. People, it's a well-oiled machine.
I'm not a guy that beats up on mainstream media, because I spent a lot of time in my life writing. I think there are a lot of well-intentioned people there. But the model for that was based upon an assumption in a society where there was goodwill on both sides, that you would have differences of opinions. And that's why it's failing now. And that's why we need something like Resolute Square, because, we're not going to tell both sides of the lie. We're not going to say, well, the guy in the Camp Auschwitz, sweatshirt in the Capitol, maybe he lost his job. And no. I don't have to understand this guy. That guy is evil.
Right.
I don't want to understand.
Just like we don't have to tell both sides of maybe Trump, really didn't know who Nick Fuentes was, and like obsessing over that, as opposed to the fact that Donald Trump made a conscious decision to have not only Kanye West, but whoever else with him, and didn't condemn who Nick Fuentes was, or what he stands for, or what his movement stands for. He went around and bitched and complained that, I didn't know, which we all know is bullshit. Like why are we even giving that any credibility? Well, we're not, because we're calling it straight as it is. And that's why I want to remind folks that if you want to be a part of this, to please go to resolutesquare.com and subscribe. And I believe we have some merch now too. So there's Resolute Square merch that you can buy. So go over there and check that out too.
Merch.
It is very trendy and cool, and it fits well. I have a sweatshirt. I should have brought it with me. I had it last time. I wanted to, before we get to another question, I just wanted to ask what the strategy is for defeating or destroying movements like this before they gain any more steam. Because, maybe it's more of a historical question, because we've seen how we've had to stomp it out in the past. I mean, what happened in Germany and in Italy, we had to fight a world war to stop. But what can we do now, like, to try to put a knife in the heart of this ilk now, given the tools that we have now, with short of a civil war in this country? Stu?
Well, look, I mean, really, Joe is best at this, because Joe created a movement with the Dean campaign where, this guy basically invented modern politics with the Dean campaign. It was why it was such a nightmare going up against him. But I think look at this historical question. I think it's a really fascinating question. Why in the 1930s, when there was a huge fascist movement in America didn't become fascist? And probably it's because Roosevelt was president and not Lindbergh or Henry Ford, who were fascists. So maybe that thing that we used to study when we had civics classes, that leaders matter. So, I think about this a lot. Like, had Romney won, the Republican Party would have been a lot of the same voters. Would it have gone in a different direction? And I think yes.
I blame you all the time, Stu, for this. That I say Mitt Romney had won, we wouldn't be here right now. Damn it!
You don't know how many nights. But I think so. The answer to me is you have to destroy that which accepts evil, and you can argue whether or not X person in the Republican Party is evil themselves. But when you accept evil, you become evil.
Right.
I mean, it's like Ukraine and Russia. You're either for Russia or you're for Ukraine. There's no middle ground.
That's right.
Russia is evil. Ukraine is civilization. Right. So you can't let yourself. It's like Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin, he's the kind of guy at a certain time in my life I would have loved as a client. Had a lot of money, seemed like a good guy.
Confident.
But, so what does he do? Yeah. He runs and he uses critical race theory as a race baiting thing.
And
I can't tell you if I've been in the room with But then he gets elected and he goes and he endorses Carrie Lake.
Right. That's right.
Who is what Carrie Lake and these people are trying to do is destroy faith in the American electoral union. Has been trying to do since before there was a Soviet Union. It's what Lenin tried to do.
Yep.
And how is it that the pro-Putin element in American politics is now in the Republican Party? It's because they accommodated evil. So you have to beat these. You cannot compromise here.
That's right.
And it's sometimes difficult to talk about because you sound alarmist or extremist. But
I don't think
is
so.
evil.
Not anymore. Yeah. Not anymore. Quickly, Joe, and then we're going to go to another question.
No, I think it's building it from the bottom up. It's like the same thing with Resolute Square. No, this isn't going to be some billionaire stepping in and saying, hey, let's create a media company that takes this stuff. That's not
that we're against billionaires. Don't get me wrong. But
yeah. No, we'd be great. Come on in. But that's not going to happen. It's got to be taking them on from the bottom up, disrupting their communication structure. That's what they've done to us. We've got to disrupt that just as we've been disrupting their attempts at the ballot box. We've got to disrupt their media. I really think that's critical to winning in the long term.
And traditional media is not going to do it.
No.
The model has failed us.
That's right. And evil triumphs when good men do nothing. Or good people, women, good men and women. Next question. Let's go to Liz McClure. There we go. Carrie Lake is the new Trump, and she is doing her best to incite an Arizona version of January 6th. How do we confront and combat her strategies based on repeated lies? For those who don't know, there is a demonstration that's been going on outside of the Arizona Capitol. Not a very large one, but Carrie Lake has not conceded. She is, tripling down on the election lie nonsense. Arizona has certified the election, I believe, but there's one county
as of today, I think.
As of today, but there was a Cochise County, or one of them was refusing to. They were having, some issues there. But this is kind of just a test run, I think, for what happens. And thankfully, we were able to defeat secretaries of state and governors in some of these key states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, that were fomenting this nonsense. But this is just a preview of what could happen if we don't completely destroy this movement and knock it out. I think we've pretty much answered the question of what the strategy is. And the strategy is not to give it oxygen, and to make sure that you combat it, and make sure you don't elect people. You're out there and you don't elect people who believe in this and give them power.
But, I just got to say, we talk about election deniers, and there are prominent ones like Carrie Lake. But Ron DeSantis is an election denier.
Yeah.
Anybody who will not assert that President Biden won a free and fair election is an election denier by definition. And we somehow dumbed it down if you're not running on this issue. But if you don't, that means that think about it. The Republican nominee for president, I think it's going to be Trump. But if it's not, it's unimaginable that it's going to be someone who will assert that Donald Trump lost a fair election because they won't be able to win a primary.
Right. That's right.
Well, they won't be able to win a general. This is my whole point. If you take on, look, I've been saying for, I don't know, a better part of a year, maybe a year and a half, that if they keep doing the crazy and we keep doing the work, we'll beat them. And
the Carrie Lake election so early.
The Carrie Lake thing is crazy. The dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Nick Fuentes, crazy. When you're owned by crazy in your party and you have to keep feeding the crazy, this is what's going to happen. We've got to keep doing the work. We've got to disrupt their media machine that they've spent billions building. We need to keep fighting at the ballot box. But in the end, this is not going away. Even if we defeat Trumpism, as long as that propaganda machine is out there, continuing to spin up. And, I was thinking about this. We talk about the Bannon line voters. I think we need to start maybe talking about the hate line. Like we've all got to join together to vote against the hate line voters. Vote people who are motivated in their voting by hate, and a party that stokes those voters because it needs them. I don't know what to call it yet, but the more I've been thinking of Bannon line, which we've been very focused on and been successful about moving some of those. What about trying to move the whole thing away from the hate voters? And how does how would DeSantis and Republican candidates have to deal with that if we
Well,
kept sort of
It's
over and
it's a
over?
great point, because it
yeah.
is about hate.
That's right. And
I mean,
that's actually something, because I want to make sure before we end the show that we talk a little bit about Georgia, because the runoff that's going on there is right around the corner. They've already started voting, and what we're seeing happen there and the way that they're running the race, because it's so close, it's like we say football is a game of inches, and politics is a game of small numbers. And that's been so close. It's why there's a runoff already as it is. And I want to show this ad and get your reaction to this ad that Reverend Warnock has put out, because I think it's interesting, because it's a little bit different from the ads, the negative ads and the formulaic campaign ads that we get inundated with and people get tired of. They've gone a little bit in a different direction. I want to show it and get your reaction.
You ever watch a stupid movie late at night hoping it's going to get better, don't get better, but you keep watching it anyway? Because the other night I was watching this movie. Called Fright Night, Freak Night, or some type of night. But it was about vampires. I don't know if you know vampires are cool people.
What the hell is he talking about?
Is he serious? Is he for real?
But I'm going to tell you something that I found out. A werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that?
What is he talking about?
I never knew that, so I didn't want to be a vampire anymore. I wanted to be a werewolf.
Oh my gosh.
He's talking about vampires and werewolves right now.
Y'all serious about this, right?
So I've been telling this little story about this bull out in the field.
What on earth?
And 3 of them are pregnant.
There's no substance. There's nothing.
So you got something going on.
It makes me want to laugh, and then it makes me think we're in trouble.
But all he cared about is kept his nose against the fence, looking at 3 other cows that didn't belong to him. Now all he had to do is eat grass.
This video is ridiculous. That's 35 seconds of my life I'll never get back.
Why would I want someone like that leading the state of Georgia?
Our good air decided to float over to China, bad air.
Unbelievable.
So when China gets our good air, their bad air gotta move.
It's all the same air.
Not only does it make no sense, I don't even understand what he thinks he's saying.
So it moves over to our good air space. And now we gotta clean that back up.
I sit and watch these on Twitter, and I'm like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Like, literally, what is he talking about?
He's completely unqualified for this really, really serious job.
No one's watching this and being like, oh man, that guy's got it together.
And sometimes, like, I read through the comments because I'm like, is anybody actually understanding, or are we just sitting here wasting time?
It is embarrassing. Let's call it what it is. It is embarrassing.
They just care about getting a yes man. Somebody that had just punched the button.
I think it's a risk to me and millions of Georgians to put this man in a position of power.
Let's call it what it is. This is embarrassing as hell.
At all. I mean, well, you know.
I thought that was
Joe, who's doing that
really
race?
good.
You know the consultant?
I don't know. I told Stuart we should make that spot like that about 2 months ago, but we never got to it. No, I love the ad. Kudos to whoever made it. It's really good. It's very, very
how many people do you think they had to shoot to get that? I bet 10 to 1. I mean, the casting for that.
But those are real voters, though, so people know they're not actors.
Yeah, real people. So, I mean,
I don't know, because I don't know how any sane person could watch that and not have that kind of reaction. So it may not. Stuart might not have been as rough as you think.
Maybe,
I know what you're
right.
saying.
It's not ideological.
I've done those.
So Stu, what makes that ad so effective?
Spot.
What makes that ad? Because I know we talked about this before off air about how you did something similar like this many moons ago. But what is it about this ad that makes it so successful?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, in a strategic sense, it destroys. It doesn't engage the premise of the Walker candidacy. The only reason you would vote for Herschel Walker is an ideological reason.
Right.
That, I've got to vote for Herschel Walker because really it's about a Republican vote versus a Democratic vote. So you don't want to fight that. And because there's no need to fight that. Why if you're in the United States, you want to have a land war with Iraq? We have other things, planes. So they take that aside. And then they're really saying what people are thinking. Like, what the fuck? How can this guy be saying this stuff?
Right.
And
be a viable
the realness of it and the unscripted nature. And you know that a lot of Walker voters have been saying the same thing. I mean, nobody is saying, you know, when Herschel Walker's in the United States Senate and there's a really tough issue, a lot of senators are going to come over and say, like, I wonder what Herschel thinks of it.
Right.
I mean, like,
wait.
We got a quick appearance by the reclusive. Rick, we thought
we have the technology.
That's right. We thought that that we were going to have to do it without you tonight, but you come and join us in the last 5 minutes of the show. Give us a good.
You know what? I apologize. I was having technical gremlins on this end. I don't know what it was, but I'm blaming myself for this one. The team here is super confident, and I'm gonna blame my old ass for not doing something right.
Listen, we know it was nameless. It was nameless. She
fucking
chewed
cat,
the cord.
by the way. So her feeder is up on this wooden bookshelf, and she's in there while we're trying to fix this tech problem, and she's banging away at it with her fists, like trying to make the feeder run.
That's why I had to lock Tiki out. You know, for those who are just joining us and don't know, Rick and I are cat lovers, and our cats usually cat bomb our shows. And Nameless was on his set earlier tonight on the breakdown. I had to lock Tiki out because my parents are visiting with their 5 cats, and so it's a whole thing going on. So we're blaming the cat. Yes, they have 5 cats and a dog that are that are visiting.
5 cats is like Siegfried and Roy territory.
Yeah, but they all get along. And a couple pity pats and it's over with. But anyway, Rick, I'm going to give you a point of personal privilege here because we're wrapping up the show, but I know folks want to hear from you. We were talking about
happy to take some questions.
We were talking about the Georgia race right now, and we do have a couple viewer questions. If you want to answer a question, would you prefer to answer a viewer question or talk about Georgia? I will give you a point of personal privilege.
Let's do viewer questions.
All right, cool. We can do that. Let's do. Here we go. It's a question about Twitter because about the strategy and what's going on with Twitter. And I know we've been discussing here doing a show specifically about what's going on there with Elon Musk and some of these anti-democracy
We're doing
bros.
a show on Elon Musk.
Yes, we're not sure when it's coming, but it's coming soon. So stay tuned for that because it's really important. That's a whole nother dark, evil ecosystem that folks really need to know about. Republicans demonize George Soros as a boogeyman and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? There's a lot of those on the Republican side financing this bullshit. So the question is from Scott Saltzman. How might changes to Twitter affect the strategy going forward? Do we need a director of memes? Should we be the, quote, gloves off organization? I would argue, Rick, that LP is already the gloves off organization, but go ahead.
Well, and I also think, Resolute's going to be a gloves off organization. Right. We're not here, as we said in that opening video that we sent out to folks, we are not here to argue with people about both sides of a lie. There's either the truth or it's not. We're not here to argue with people who think that storming the Capitol is a tourist visit. We're not here to argue with people that think that, COVID vaccines contain lizard alien DNA. We're not fighting that fight because those people are absolutely fucking insane. Mm-hmm. And so that idea that we have to fight in a very aggressive way now on Twitter and on other platforms is legitimate, though. Because what's happened to Twitter right now is Elon Musk said to, even before he's opened the floodgate to bring back all these formerly banned accounts, what Elon Musk has said is, okay, MAGAs, I'm not going to boot you off the platform for disinformation. I'm not going to throw you off the platform for COVID misinformation. Right. I'm not going to throw you off the platform for using racial slurs. And that is before he's allowed all of these insane alt-right people to return. And, there's sort of celebration going on over on 4chan and 8kun and all these weird-ass Discord and Telegram channels. They love this. So what he's done is this big green light because he wants to have a singular right-wing media ecosystem that is the social media equivalent of Fox News. Right. Because Fox drove out anybody who wasn't a truther in terms of the election. They drove out anybody who wasn't, fully all in on the big lie. Musk would like to drive out, using sort of a social media version of Gresham's law where bad drives out good. He would like to drive out the dialogue on Twitter and have it as a right-wing meme machine. Mm-hmm. Now, look, he's got one of two outcomes here. Either he fails and it collapses, which is a high frequency, high likelihood.
Came close 2 weeks ago. People were, counting it down. They thought I was on life support.
Yep. Or the bulk of people on Twitter who are not, who don't want to spend their time and money, dealing with people with Twitter accounts like Jew Oven Nazi Gestapo Master 666.
Right.
They'll go somewhere else. I don't know where that is yet. Is it Mastodon, or is it Post, or is it something new? I don't know where that is yet. But you will eventually. We're going to have a fight in the political space, and right now the political space is still meaningfully defined by Twitter.
Yeah,
I'm not going to leave until they turn the lights off. I do have an account on Post.
I'm still waiting to be accepted
as a fallback. I'll hook you up, girl.
Okay, thank you.
I still think we ought there. It should be Resolute Square. I mean, we should literally start to think about creating.
You know what? It's not a bad idea. Tell us what you think in the chat, folks. We'd love to see. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But look. I mean, this is a battle where a bunch of weird ass guys and Stuart and I are talking about this morning. And to be blunt, folks, these are the guys who never got laid in college, but they ended up making billions of dollars. They're fucking weird.
Yeah.
So
just watch
David
the Social
Sachs
Network.
and Peter Thiel and yes, and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. These guys are weird.
Yeah.
They do not operate in the universe we operate in. And so
they have so much money where they can do that without consequence, unless people hold them to account and push back on it, which is
George or Peter Thiel bought himself a U.S. senator this year.
Yeah, that's right. And JD Vance.
After Vance's name just R. Thielandia.
Yeah. He tried with Blake Masters, but failed in Arizona. That was another
Talk about
one.
A weird ad.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, what's good? I just got confirmation that there will be the show focusing on this on Thursday at 6 p.m. here on Resolute Square with Rick and Stu and others, talking about Elon Musk, Twitter, this pipeline of anti-democracy bros that are out there. And what's happening. So make sure you guys tune in 6 o'clock on Thursday live with Lee Rick Wilson and Stu Stevens and others to be announced. So it's happening, guys. It's happening Thursday for more of that. Well, it is time to wrap up the show. Rick, I'm glad you had a chance to come in
sorry, folks.
Join us for a minute.
Yep.
It's all right. It's all right. It happens. Don't worry about it.
I'll just buy a new laptop every week.
The Russians, Rick.
I'm the all-time champion of breaking laptops. Trust me.
Oh,
I can break a laptop by looking at it.
Oh, that's funny. That is so funny.
Of course, that really makes you want to fly with Rick, doesn't it?
No, I'm really good in the air.
I don't understand these computer stuff. I mean, let's just go for a flight. I'll take you out.
Right.
I think I'm going to take a cab, man. I'm going to call it.
Oh my God, I'd fly with you, Rick. My little brother's a pilot too, and he used to fly down the Florida Keys, and he had a flight school there and everything. And he picked me up once from Fort Lauderdale Airport many years ago, and I thought I was the shit because I had a private pilot, even though it was like a Cessna. Was it like a what's the smaller
170?
Cessna? 172. Yeah. And but it didn't matter because I got to go over to the private airport pickup place in Fort Lauderdale, and we flew to the Keys, and it was one of the most beautiful flights ever over the Keys, and we landed safe and sound, and it was amazing.
That is
so I would fly with you
down there.
Yeah, and you're still with us. That's good.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, guys, as we wrap up the show tonight, predictions for the Senate runoff, because I believe we'll have results before the next time we're together. Maybe not. Stu, you go first. Quick round robin.
Look, I would take Warnoff and give 3 points.
Warnock by 3. Trippi?
Yeah,
Warnock. Look, I think the biggest thing was Cortez winning Cortez Mastos, winning in Nevada. That made this not about control, because I think a lot of the people who voted for the governor, Kemp, might have thought, geez, I got to. I don't think they're there. And I think the Warnock campaign's doing a good job of ridiculing Walker. So I think Warnock wins by maybe 4.
Wilson.
I'm going to go crazy. I think Warnock wins by 6. I think he stomps stomps Walker into the ground because I think the guy has become so poisonous that even Brian Kemp, who promised he was going to put the machine to work.
If you're in Georgia, keep doing the work. Keep doing the work.
Yes, that is exactly the way I wanted to wrap it, is just to say that is no excuse to stop knocking doors, kicking ass, making calls, because the higher that number is, the more damage you do to the MAGA candidates. I had an article today on Resolute Square about why Walker represents the next wave of Republican candidates and how weak and bad they're going to be. And I think it's something that we've got to really look at to anticipate in the future. Like, we're going to have more Walkers out there. That's good news for democracy.
That's right. And the more that we can repudiate this, the less it lessens the threat to our democracy. We have to repudiate this ilk, because that's the only way these people respond, is if you get their asses kicked at the ballot box.
Pain is the only teacher.
That's right. Political pain.
Oh, I don't know.
Rick. Anywho, thank you guys. It's not after midnight, and we're not talking about DC after dark. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much. Stu Stevens, Joe Trippi, the Rick Wilson. Thank you all for joining us again for the strategy call in Resolute Square. Please go to resolutesquare.com and subscribe, and make sure you check out the fellas on Thursday, 6 p.m. They will be talking about Elon Musk and the dark web. And
then we'll get Rick's real opinion on Elon Musk. He won't.
I already know it's gonna be a good one. So thank you guys so much.
We're going to quote from a book that Peter Thiel co-authored that will.
Yes, we are. It's delicious.
And he's had some doozies, especially about his feelings on democracy, folks. So anywho, make sure you tune in on Thursday at 6 p.m. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.